Hi everyone, my name is Sunny Eimy, and thank you for listening to my final presentation. I grew up in a family-owned newspaper business in western Iowa where my grandfather and father had the business for nearly 60 years. I really thought I was going to be the third generation of family ownership, but things did not work out that way. I did work in journalism immediately following college at several newspapers across the state of Iowa. I eventually landed at a university and served as their sports information director. And then I returned to my alma mater, which is Central College in Pella, Iowa, where I began working in the advancement and alumni offices. My husband took a job in Chicagoland for a while, so I went out on my own and had an external media relations business for a while and also did some retail marketing for a Fortune 500 company. That was a fun experience for me, but then I returned to Pella, and in my current role, I am in external relations. I do a lot of work with our president and the trustees, and then all other external relations, community, government, church, a lot of our public relations needs, and then special projects and everything else that comes my way. And that's actually the favorite part about my job right now, is the variety of it. Several things led me to graduate school at the University of Nebraska-Lincoln. I've been a lifelong Husker fan, and in the fall of 2013, my mother passed away. And sort of in alignment with that, I have a very supportive husband, Nathan, and my boss, the president of Central College, encouraged me to write down some life goals. And this surfaced something that I wanted to have accomplished before I turned 40. I professionally have always deeply valued both my undergraduate and now my graduate educations, and I've been somewhat of a utility player in the workplace. So these experiences have been very important to me as I continue down my professional career path. I am someone who really likes to keep my options open, so I have a lot of dreams and professional goals. I would love to publish children's books, for example, start our own business. My husband and I talk about that a lot. Really love economic and community development initiatives, nonprofits, and have enjoyed working with executive leadership both in the corporate context and at the collegiate level. But for the purpose of this project, and really what the IMC program has done for me, is really well prepared me for higher education leadership. Throughout all of the graduate work you see there, the last two classes are my remaining electives, and I hope to graduate in August like many of you. But a lot of this has led me to feel more deeply prepared to stay and work in higher education in what will hopefully be an elevated role. I've been exposed to a lot of new concepts throughout the program, but three particularly stood out to me: the GAPS model of service quality, diffusion theory, and brand integrity. I had not realized for quite some time that I actually work in the services industry, which higher education is a part of. So my services marketing class was pretty instrumental and very meaningful to the work that I do. The gaps that surfaced in this model of service quality: there are customer gaps, which is the difference between customer expectations and perceptions. There are listening gaps, when the company does not understand customer expectations. And it's really been said that companies often do not know what customers expect, and therefore they just do not deliver on their service. And a lot of times companies are afraid to ask, which I know is really detrimental to their success. The service design and standards gap, that can have to do with the difference between what a company understands of those expectations, and then they just don't develop them correctly. A lot of times services are developed from a company point of view, that is with profitability and productivity in mind. And if they were developed from a customer point of view, I think that companies would see a lot more success in meeting those expectations of consumers. The service performance gap is the difference between the standards that were developed by customers and then actually the services performed by the employees. Services industries are fundamentally human enterprises, and it can be very difficult to sustain quality when working with a wide variety of people and personalities. Finally, the communication gap is the last gap, and it's really just about external communications, which is where I spend a lot of my time. Companies need to do what they say they're going to do. And internal communication, making sure your own employees know exactly what's being said in the marketplace, is one of the biggest keys to closing any communication gap that exists in the marketplace. Diffusion theory surfaced in several classes for me and is attributed to Rogers that talks about 5 stages of adoption, that there's awareness, then interest, evaluation, trial, and finally adoption. And most consumers don't even know they're going through that process, but it is something that everybody does go through. We talk about a lot of types of users in that, and they're listed there. The innovators are the first to try new products and new things. About 2.5% of the U.S. population is that. The laggards are the remaining people that are slow to change or they never adopt anything at all. That's about 16%. Most of us fall within the early majority or late majority. Finally, brand integrity is a concept that really resonated with me. It's just companies saying and doing the right thing and doing what they say they'll do. They've got to be authentic and act with integrity and deliver on their promises. So brand integrity has surfaced in several areas throughout this program, of course. It was in 8 IMC concepts. It's listed in the 14 principles that guide the IMC program. And it's really impacted a lot of my work too, in having companies and Central College, particularly where I work, deliver on what it says it's going to do. One of the reasons these 3 concepts meant so much to me is because they're really all interrelated. So I named my model Big Diff, which certainly isn't going to win any awards out there, but it did help me remember things with the brand identity gaps and diffusion model. So essentially what that means to me, in my view, is that diffusion must be carried out with integrity in order to close service gaps and strengthen a brand. So, for example, as people move through the diffusion process there on the right, which is done in order, at any point along the way, they could encounter a gap, which could positively or negatively impact their service along the way. The authenticity of the brand and its integrity, if they're done well, is something that closes gaps and speeds up and advances the diffusion process. So the overarching umbrella really for all of the work here is brand integrity for services. I want to spend just a quick minute of time here going over 2 examples of events that would occur in this model. For example, taking the listening gap, poor service recovery is an example of that. So let's say a customer has an iPhone and they walk into an iPhone store and it's not working well. And the store employees offer little to no help in setting up the phone correctly. They don't seem to care about letting the customer walk out unhappy and angry. The customer might leave, tweet angrily about the experience, and if the Apple Store, for example, in this case, does nothing to recover that service, then a customer is lost and angry. And the diffusion process is incomplete. They're not going to adopt the product, and the brand integrity has been negatively impacted. A second example might be using the service design and standards gap, and this could have something to do with the service-scape, for example. So let's say a consumer hears a radio advertisement, they learn about a service, they drive up to the physical place or store to seek out this service, and once they get there, now that their awareness and interest has been piqued, they're under an evaluation mode right now in the diffusion process. They get there, they roll into the parking lot, they see a very run-down building, poor signage, just is not meeting their expectations at all, and they walk away. So the diffusion process is incomplete. Again, brand identity is negatively impacted, and this is something that the service-scape, there's a large enough gap there between the consumer's expectations that they just walked away. Like many of us, this entire program has made me better professionally, and I've learned so much. So I have had several areas that I'd like to call out specifically that have really impacted my day-to-day work, as well as my long-term thinking for career planning. I know social media is a really large bucket, but the growth I've experienced in this area has just been tremendous. Prior to the program, I would say I was pretty fluent in Facebook, Twitter, and LinkedIn. If I'm being honest, though, I had not taken the time to learn how settings and insights really impacted usage in those areas. Since the program, I have been exposed to just an unbelievable amount of social media sites, apps, and tools, some of which include Google products, Instagram, Snapchat, podcasts, Yik Yak, Periscope, and so many more. I had a really in-depth look at Periscope through a group project, and that was a neat experience. We did a lot of qualitative research. We talked with college students and worked on what that tool would mean to two specific universities and how they could implement it into their social media planning for their college, and ways they could use it to engage current students. Additionally, I'd like to call out Dave Kerpen's book called Likeable Social Media. It's the single most important book I've read probably in this class. I leave it on my desk like a handbook every day. So that book meant a lot to me, and it had a lot to do with social media. Advertising, this was my first formal exposure to the content, and Google AdWords in particular has been really helpful to my career. The planning experiences pushed me tremendously. I was called upon to do business plans, communication plans, marketing plans, social media plans, and even developed a service blueprint, all of which were pretty new experiences to me. I'd be remiss if I did not mention all the technology and skill sets that were strengthened throughout this, the presentation and writing skills, just to name a few, and all of the other things that we've been called upon to use, like Screencast-O-Matic here. The research and case studies really brought the material to life for me. It was fun to see the theories and things we were reading about in real-life situations, and that makes the concepts more meaningful. Public relations, although it's been a large part of my job and career, I have never had any formal training in it. So I appreciated the theories behind that, the code of ethics and understanding that, certainly the tensions that can surface between transparency and honesty and the importance of that. And finally, branding. And this has really had the most impact on my career, and I'm going to spend a lot more time on that in a minute. Implementing the learning for me absolutely has been happening. So both now and later, I totally anticipate I will use all of this material. Throughout all of this, I was appointed to what we call the Gang of Five, which is 5 individuals serving as the Chief Marketing Officer for Central College. In the past 2 years, I've had experience with pricing studies. We've researched our market, surveyed lost customers, countless interviews. We've partnered with design firms, digital advertising agencies, marketing consultants, other outside expertise. We're investigating trademarking and licensing, and we've really been rolling out the Central College brand across our campus. That's an experience that I've had the opportunity to go around and present 13 times with the president of our college, and reaching every department on our campus. And we've really been talking about how the Central College brand is every person, every interaction, and every experience that someone has with us. So it's been a fun time doing that. Google AdWords, we are implementing this at Central College as well. We found it's a pretty open space for colleges. Not a lot of colleges are using Google AdWords, and we have a real opportunity to capitalize on our newest academic program, which is a BS degree in engineering. Finally, I've mentioned this before, but my husband and I have talked about either purchasing a small business in our hometown. There seem to be many these days that just have not had succession plans in place, and therefore they do not have the next generation of owners. We've also considered going out on our own and buying a corporate branch through his company as well. So I know that I would use absolutely all of the IMC program experience and learnings in both of those situations as well. It has been an absolute pleasure working with all of you, such brilliant faculty minds and students, and I've really enjoyed the experience. I really wish all of you the best, and I certainly hope all of our paths cross again in the future. Thank you so much.